Welcome to Digital Democracy on Tap. I'm Sarah Jane Crespo. At the start of every new year, people talk about resolutions. We're tonight going to talk about New Year's solutions. We've gathered a panel of pros who help people do this for a living to head us in the right direction. First up, we have Jennifer Liss of the Creative Commute podcast. Also, Patricia Houston from WSU's Community Engagement Institute. Jill Miller, headmistress of the Finishing School for Modern Women, and Jenny Wiley, a community coach with the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. Over the next hour, please send us questions through the Facebook comments, or you can just email us at info@kmuw.org. Let's get started. It often seems to me that the essential problem, or maybe the human condition we're facing, is the push and pull between control and uncertainty. We want to feel like we're in control of the world around us, or at least of our own lives, but uncertainty looms at every corner, it seems, and just the day-to-day changing of the calendar can bring a sense of hope and a sense of failure, sometimes simultaneously. So how can we look forward and manage ourselves to create the best possible 2021? Patricia, let's start with you because there can be that dark side to the new year. Tell us about the prevention initiative at WSU's Engagement Institute.
I'll be glad to. Thank you for having me here. I'd love to share. I work for Wichita State University in the Community Engagement Institute, and I am in the Prevention Initiative Center. And we know that uncertainty is all around us. And so what we try to do at Prevention is to create some borders around that you can use to shore up that uncertainty. So being able to understand that uncertain things happen, but how can I be prepared for it? How can I make sure that I am not, if we are going to prevent probably looking at substance abuse or something like that, how can I make sure I'm not triggered by creating and putting family around me, or making sure I have that number to call when I'm feeling uncertain about, or I'm dealing with anxiety, or making sure I have that access to healthcare professionals that can chat with me and talk with me, and creating those things. So the things that you can control, put those in place, and know that things are going to be uncertain and things are going to happen that are beyond your control.
Do you find this to be a more critical time of year to talk about mental health?
Oh, yes, especially with the holidays. And I think with the pandemic and all that went on that really sequestered us to our homes and stuff, loneliness is a big draw sometimes with dealing with substance abuse or dealing with some kind of mental health crisis or something like that when you're feeling alone. And so it's important to know that you're not alone. So we did a lot of Zoom calls and Zoom meetings with our providers that provide that kind of services to also shore up the provider side of things so that they could give out the information that they needed to give out to the clients and be able to do that. So sometimes you have to take care of yourself. And so we did some things around taking care of the people that were out there doing prevention work to take care of them so that they can take care of others.
Yeah, how do you start with that? Like, you know, if what people need to do is to prepare for or set up these different kind of these measures to help them in the, you know, on that day when they really are feeling low, how do you encourage people to do that?
The thought process is, and I love that we have coaches on here, and we have Miss Jill who is doing things like looking forward and knowing that you have things that trigger you. So it may be someone just, if we take substance abuse, being around other people that do substance abuse, there's a trigger in that. And so when you understand who you are and understand about yourself, then you're able to better manage or better able to avoid those kind of things and those kind of triggers. And so I think it takes a deep dive into yourself, reaching out to your mental health professional and really diving into yourself and understanding your triggers.
So some introspection is the
Yes.
order of the day.
Which is what the pandemic did. It brought back a lot of because we spent a lot of time with ourselves.
Yeah. So you have said that before New Year's, you had mentioned this before, that it isn't about the new me, it's sort of about the old me. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, every year it's this new year, new me, and we go through this and we try to scrap our whole selves and try to recreate this new person. And so on this year, I was like, I am okay with who I am, right? I'm okay. And so in being okay with who I am, I just want to be better. I just want to do better. I just want to reach out and be better. I want to show up better in the spaces that I need to show up in. And in order to do that, it's not about scrapping who I am, it's about building on who I am. And so I'm looking for opportunities in which to grow, in which to increase, and to do those kind of things. And so I'm not trying to just scrap the model and start all over again with the new year, new me.
Yeah, I think that resonates with me. It's yeah, you're building on who you already are. You're not, kind of abandoning all that you have become up to this point in life. Thank you.
Right. If I get rid of all the wisdom that I have, then I'm starting all over, right, everyone? If I give up all the wisdom that I have, then, it's like starting all over, and that's not what you want. You want to be able to just show up in spaces and be that light and be who it is that you're supposed to be in those moments in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, reframing can be very
and
important.
I like that you bring up, Patricia, how important it is to acknowledge that we are good and whole in who we are right now. We don't have to ditch everything and start all over again. I love that point.
Jill, let's come to you next. At the Finishing School for Modern Women, you offer a la carte classes that range from everything from decluttering your house to transitioning from trauma. Can you talk a bit about what it means for a person to kind of hit the reset button, as you've said?
I think that the pandemic has been a really golden opportunity to hit that reset button. If you've always wanted to do something or you're not happy with anything in your life, now is an excellent time to jettison that trash and move forward with who you want to be and how you want to be. It's a really great time for reinvention. And I think that, if the worst thing that comes out of this is that we've all had a chance to determine, what am I like? What do I like in my life? What don't I like in my life? And deciding what we want to leave behind and where we want to go. I think that's such a great positive thing. And it takes a lot, to Patricia, what Patricia said, it takes a lot of introspection, which is very, very difficult. But at the same time, doing that work will change your life and give you the life that you want to live instead of the life you feel stuck in living.
Since you've both mentioned, Jennifer, did you want to add to that?
I was like, yes, snaps.
This is probably something, Jennifer and Jenny, that both of you might add on as well as we continue. But for Patricia and Jill, so far, you've both kind of touched on this concept of introspection, and I'm wondering if you can offer any tips, or like the first tips that come to mind to help people to do that. If you aren't in the habit of doing that, how do you start?
If I can jump in, then so go ahead, Jill.
Sure.
I feel like I have a ground place to start on that, because you
go first and I'll go second. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
My 2020 experience was that I realized I didn't know who I was. And so I had to go way deep inside, and it was some rough stuff figuring it out. But I think, to everyone's point so far, and I think, Patricia, you said this, 2020 forced us to stop, slow down. And that was a huge wake up for me. It was like, wow, who am I? What do I want? And that reset button, actually, Jill, when you said that, I actually breathed like yes, somebody tell me it's okay to reset and think about things and figure out what I want to do. So when you talk about introspection, what I discovered in 2020 is how stinking important and time consuming that can be, but it's worth it. It's so worth it to go in and figure out, what do I really want out of life, and go from there. So I feel like if you haven't done that, if you don't really have like a solid grounding of that, there's some work to do for sure. And it's totally worth doing it. And then I wondered if I could hand it to one of you wonderful women who can say what the first step is. You're very experienced.
got it.
Oh,
I'm kind of like a step 1, 2, 3 kind of person. That's kind of just how I think linearly like that. So I think one of the first things we've got to do is give space. You got to have space to be introspective. It's not going to happen when you're busy and you're talking or watching TV or all of these things. Those things can all trigger introspection, but you've got to have some quiet, devoted time to yourself. And then what I have found really works well too is journaling or writing. And so if I just start, if there's something that's bothering me and I just start writing about it, that I discover things I hadn't even known that I was thinking. And so those are a couple of things I think, that tips that I give on how to be introspective. But there's one more I have for you. And one is that not everyone can be introspective by themselves. There may be that you have a lot of past trauma or something like that's tying you or keeping you stuck from being able to explore some of those things. Sometimes they're really big things that if you don't break through that first, you're not going to be able to keep going. And so that's why we love our mental health professionals and coaches and other people that can really help you to break through, because it's not going to be feasible for every person to just sit by themselves and think. In fact, it might be more damaging to try to do that than to go see someone to get that help. So those are my 3 pointers.
and mine
I
would
bet
be
Jenny has more.
one of my things that I did when the pandemic started was, one is because we're active, not busy, but because we're active women, sometimes we do so much outside of the home and we do so much that when the pandemic hit and we're all forced into our homes, it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this? And so one of the things I did at the beginning of the pandemic on my Facebook page was I started talking about getting reacquainted with your stuff. So we know we have all this stuff around us. We have all these. And so in introspect, even though I'm getting by myself and I'm in this space, when I go and look at boxes that I haven't looked in forever, and I start looking at the life that I have had, I mean, it did so much for me, my family, my kids as they grew up, the things, the places I had been that I had forgotten I've been, the jobs that I've had, the things that I've learned, those kind of things. And I was getting pumped up just going through these things, knowing that I am somebody. I have done some things. I have accomplished some things in my life. So getting reacquainted with the stuff that's around you, all of the things that you have collected over the years that bring back memories, that show you the things, the good times, even some of them not so good. You talked about journaling, Jill. I used to journal a lot, and I used to journal out of being angry or something that was happening to me. And so when I go back and I read those kind of things, I think about, oh my God, I've grown up. Oh my God, that doesn't bother me as much. And so I give myself credit for the things that I've done and then start working for the things that are going forward. So that's what I would say. Get reacquainted with your stuff. Get reacquainted with the things that you have in your home. Get reacquainted with the journals and those kind of things that you have.
I love that. Yeah. And just to expand on that, absolutely giving yourself some space to be able to do the work. Sometimes it is a luxury to be able to make sure that my bills are going to be paid and I'm going to be able to feed my kids and, I'm going to be able to give them an education and all those different types of, necessity biological things that need to happen. So of course, like take care of those baseline things first, set yourself up to be supported and in a space where that's not going to necessarily be a massive drain. And even if you don't have an answer right now, know that you have an answer within you that you're going to be able to uncover through this process. So giving yourself that space, like Jill said, is super important. And I love being able to reflect and kind of start to understand where that line begins, that thread begins to move through your life. Like what Patricia's saying, reflecting back on, who am I really? What do I really value? What is important to me? What have I been relying on outside of myself, that may have been in pre-pandemic life that now is gone. And I really have to just look at what's important to me and not assess my value based on what's going on outside of me. And so one of the other things that, besides really sitting with your values, what are those core things that are really, really important to me? Like, is family a necessity for me? Like, is that something that is just a part of who I am, being a part of a family? Or is freedom a value to me? Do I want to feel uninhibited by my responsibilities? Do I want to feel like I'm at choice in my life? What is that? What are those things that I really value? And then the other technique that I like to give myself is a permission slip. Permission to be wrong, permission to change my mind, permission to dump my head onto a journal and know that everything that I put in that journal is what's inside of me, but I get to choose what the truth is and what I'm going to move forward with. So the permission slip is a really nice technique. I'm giving myself permission to have space to think about this, or, permission to talk to my friend and not worry about feeling judged. Anything could be, given a permission slip to go in and do this work.
Wow,
Or even
those are-
permission to not do any work today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Permission to take care of myself and prioritize my health.
Yes.
Yes.
Love
They're awesome tips, you guys. We're off to a good start here.
that.
Jill, I want to come back to you for a moment. You do a lot with goal setting and embracing change, sometimes by knowing what to let go of, which we're touching on a little bit here. How do you help people find perspective and set appropriate goals or SMART goals?
So one thing, when I start the year, I used to start the year by having a New Year's resolution. Like, this year's the year that it's, going to change. Wrong. And so then I started doing goal setting, and goal setting worked really well for me. And I don't look at goal setting as something that you just do once a year. It's something that I work on continually. I teach SMART goals in almost every, it feels like, finishing school class, because I think they're so important. And I teach entrepreneurship in the arts at Wichita State. And I teach that on the first day. And then on their final, I have them tell me how they did and how they look at goals or how that's changed. And it's really amazing how much that helps people. I do something now at the beginning of the year that's different, but we'll probably touch on that a little bit later. But as far as goals go, I love the SMART goals. So S stands for specific. M stands for measurable. You've got to be able to quantify it. Specific is being very detailed in what it is you want. And then A stands for attainable. It makes you stretch, but not so far you can't actually do it. And then for me, R is relevant. And what that means to me is this something I really want? Or is this something I just think I should do, or I think other people want me to do? So R is really important to me. And then T stands for time bound, because if we don't have some kind of deadline, the chances are we're never going to get it done. So I've just found that setting goals in that way makes the goal setting more successful than just setting goals without the SMART part to it. Also, I think a really important part of setting goals is not more than 2 or 3 at a time. I think we get this like grocery list. It's almost like a to-do list of all the things that we want to accomplish. And to try to do that all at once is just so overwhelming that it stops people from being able to achieve what they really want to achieve. And I even prioritize those 3. Which one is the most important in my life? And then second and third, because if I've got to choose a focus, I'm going to choose that one that's going to have the most impact, the highest impact for me.
Thank you, Jill.
Love that.
Let's take the conversation to Jenny Wiley. What does it mean to adopt a coaching mindset? That was something you had mentioned to me before. What does that mean to adopt that?
Yeah, so when we're approaching things like resolutions or goal setting, embracing a coaching mindset can be a really useful tool. We all have our own inner coach, so to speak, that can help us uncover answers that we may feel like are unattainable because something is limiting us, from being able to see what a solution or an outcome or a goal is that we want to achieve. So to have a coaching mindset is to practice curiosity. When something comes up for you, really putting on the curiosity hat and saying, wow, that's super interesting. I wonder why I'm reacting this way. This must be important to me. Also with coaching mindset, you really want to practice acknowledging and validating yourself, or practicing that with someone who you're talking with. We were talking about not throwing away, who I was in the past year or my past, like acknowledging that is a part of who you are, and really validating yourself, not giving excuses for like, well, I was kind of a jerk, because it's understandable that I was feeling that way. It's more like, wow, I really had a strong reaction, and it makes sense that I had that strong reaction because of this and this and this. And that's validating yourself. Everything that you feel is completely understandable. And to be able to acknowledge and validate that and really diffuse it helps you to be able to see more possibilities and more answers ahead of you. The other thing that I like to add in with the coaching mindset is really getting to the essence and kind of like energy of what it is that you're trying to experience. So when you think about like a goal, or, what people might traditionally call like, this is my resolution for the year, a lot of times that can be very externally motivated. And so a lot of people might find themselves, in like January setting a resolution or a goal, and then by February or March, life is completely different. And, that goal may not be really very practical or attainable anymore. And so what I like to do is drill down and really get into what is the essence or the energy of what I want to feel and experience in my life. So a lot of us as coaches, we like to choose, some might do this, choose a word of the year. And that word is really kind of like a value or a rallying cry that you can keep coming back to no matter what the circumstances are, that can keep you pulling through towards what it is that you want to feel and experience without being tied to an external outcome. And once you take that time and space to really tap into that essence, that word, that energy that you want to align with, I bet you'll find that the possibilities become way more expansive and more things will open up to you, because you haven't set the bar at, I have to achieve this in order to feel happy. My joy and achievement and happiness comes from just being in that state, that word, whatever it is for you, connection or family or joy, play, whatever that is for you. Your entire year then can unfold in front of you based on that significant element. And then you can start to move into like SMART goals and what is practical and what's reasonable and what opportunities are in front of me that I can take advantage of.
I love what you said, that flexibility of being able to, if you don't have flexibility, even within those SMART goals or in those, you can be staring at a door that you think you want open, and there's 20 other doors that are open, ready for you. And you're staring at that one that will not open. So you have to have flexibility. I love that. That's awesome.
Right.
My word is increase.
Increase.
Ooh.
Love it.
Mine's similar. Picking a word of the year changed my life. It really did. I've been doing it. This is my 4th year of doing it. And my first year, it was surrender. I was so worried all of the time. Oh my gosh, just so, and you get a lot more out of life like this than you do white knuckling it.
Yeah.
And so that surrender really helped me a lot. This year, my word is abundance, which means a lot of different things to me. It could be, space or time or people or money or whatever it is. But that's my word this year. And last year, my word was a phrase, which only Elvis fans will know what this means. TCB. You know what TCB means?
Not an Elvis one.
Oh my God. It was, so he had a logo that was a lightning bolt and it said TCB, taking care of business.
Oh, yes. That's awesome.
Elvis, I thought it was taking care of baby.
I love that. That's such a great example, Jill, of, embracing a TCB, mindset, and that I can absolutely envision how that carried you through your year, no matter what it was that you were working on or achieving or aligning with. TCB,
Yep.
And it was just like a rallying cry, it sounds like. That's awesome.
It was. It's really this, having a word of the year or setting that intention has changed my life. And it looks like we all do this. Do you do that too, Jennifer?
sure do. I'm so passionate about Word of the Year. That's something that this is my
Great.
6th year doing a Word of the Year, and I have screwed it up and I have done it really well. And I've just learned so much from doing it, because what Jenny was saying about sometimes when you choose something that isn't flexible, then it's like you feel like a failure when it doesn't work out. And that's what happened to me in 2019. I had follow through as my word, and it was I did not follow through on anything. Like, what does that even mean? It's like, and then I was like, it's a compound word. Maybe that's why it failed. I don't know. But then last year I chose delight, and what a word to have for 2020. But it was the greatest gift, having delight as my word, because I knew that that's what I wanted to achieve. To what you're all saying, like, that's the end goal. I want to be delighted. I want to experience delight, feel delight. And so because that was my word, even in the midst of the poop storm that was 2020, I was finding reasons to delight, and that it guided me. And so that feeling, like, how do I want to feel, really pushed me through that. And so my word this year is trust, for similar white knuckle reasons that you're talking about. I need the surrender.
Mhm. Love that.
I love that too. I want to go back, Jenny, to some kind of what you were talking about, that sort of, to me, how I internalized it is that your triggers sort of mean something.
Mhm.
And if you look at why it is you're getting upset or you're getting triggered, and finding not just like, why, this upsets me, whatever this is, but that whatever it is something important to you.
Mhm.
And there's a value underneath all of the emotion
Absolutely.
that is getting poked at or something. And that, identifying that can maybe be helpful in overcoming being triggered.
Absolutely. That is such a great reflection. And, I think that being okay with looking at that is a really interesting skill that can take some time to start to develop, because sometimes it doesn't feel great to look at a trigger, like if you're having, dinner with family and somebody says something that, rubs you the wrong way, to be able to look at yourself and say, wow, what is it about myself that is not okay with this? Instead of saying, I don't like what that person did, you have to kind of turn it back on yourself. But there really is gold that you can dig into by giving yourself some space to reflect on that. I mean, a good example might be if somebody, does trigger you at dinner when you're having a conversation, giving yourself time, later on or in a safe space to reflect on that. Okay, so that bothered me. What was it about that bothered me? Well, I was talking and they talked over me. And so I didn't like the way that it felt to be talked over. I feel like I feel like what I was saying was not significant or wasn't important enough. And it's like, well, why do I feel like I'm not important enough? And you can start to kind of peel the onion back and say, well, actually, it is important to me that my voice is heard. And so then you can share that with people and say, actually, the last time you interrupted me, I felt really dismissed, and it's important to me to feel heard, and I'd like for you to listen now. And you can, say that in a loving way, because you've spent the time really digging into what that means for you, rather than what might be kind of a default for some of pointing the finger and saying, I'm right and you're wrong.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I like to go back in that same, just to take it one step further.
Sure.
I ask myself, when have I felt like that before?
Yes. Yes.
It seems to me, though, that half the time, well, maybe, I don't know what percentage, some of the time it might be something that you would need to talk to some other person about ultimately, but from like a more enlightened position, but that also some other portion of the time, it might be that this person is seeming to attack your pride, and well, it doesn't actually reflect on me, so it's not actually who I am. So
Yes.
I don't need to even let it bother me. I won't even receive that.
This isn't even about me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There
Is
can
there
absolutely be that.
a couple different tracks, I guess, or I don't know how you would identify which thing you're dealing with, if it's a thing that you yourself, if it's your own kind of problem, or if it's I don't know. How do you see where I'm going with this? Like, how do you kind of tease apart the root?
Well, I mean,
Issues?
I love that you're offering another perspective on this, because that kind of validates the point of partnering with somebody to be able to have that safe space to kind of tease that out, a mentor or a coach or a therapist that, can listen and reflect back to you what they're hearing, so that then you can look at that with more clarity is something that is really a gift.
Been
Now,
realizing too that we're always going to have to be looking at ourselves. We can't change anybody else but ourselves. And so sometimes it's, am I setting the right boundaries? How am I communicating those boundaries to people? So a lot of times we have to look at what our responsibility is in that, and how we're going to change things, knowing that we can't change them.
Yeah.
I want to shift here over to Jen to talk about the creative commute. What is it? How did it come about? And how have you seen it benefiting people?
Yes, I love talking about the creative commute. So when COVID first happened and we were all going to be working from home, that night before, I just felt like the world was falling apart, and I wanted to gain control of what was happening. I had no control and I needed some control. And so I thought, what could make me feel good? And what is an opportunity that I have here? And I had an extra 25 minutes a day that I wouldn't be driving to and from work. And so I decided to use that time to do something creative. And then I thought, maybe other people want to do it too. Maybe other people feel out of control. And so I made a Facebook group, and I decided that I would go live and submit a creative challenge for us to all do the next day. And so it is a Facebook group where we do creative challenges together. And we've been doing it since March 16th. Was when it started. And it's a wonderful, beautiful community. And we have just supported each other through this time, through creativity, fostering some self-care with creativity, and lots of introspection. We do a lot of sharing and introspection in there. And that has helped. It's really like, what do I need? Other people might need this too. And then also asking the community, what do you need? And finding different ways to do that. So we do lots of fun, silly challenges and some serious challenges too. It's a lot of fun.
What is it about creativity, a creative pursuit? What is it about that helps people to self-care?
I think there's a lot of things there, but at the heart of it, we are all creative beings. We are all creative. We all have this inner creator inside of us. And I believe that a lot of us have lost connection with who that person is. And that could have started at a very, very young age, or it could have started after that. But, a lot of us have lost touch with who that is. And so my goal really is to help connect people back to that and to find joy in that. And so I think that no matter what creative thing you're doing, you're going to find some peace there, because it's who you are. That's who you are. And maybe creativity to you is painting. That's what a lot of us think of is like the end result is like a painting, or but so many things are creative. We're human, we're creative. That's what we do. And so I think that that's why, when you talk about why does it bring you peace, it's because it's bringing you home. It's bringing you home to yourself and what you enjoy. We don't focus enough on joy. What do you genuinely enjoy? And so I don't think it matters whether you're drawing or writing, or I'm really into drawing and writing, but whatever the creative pursuit, it's going to bring you some kind of peace if you enjoy it, as long as you enjoy it.
So it's seeming to me like with all of these tips and ideas coming from you all, that there's sort of like a diet that people want to have, like a self-care diet of some sort, that, you know, part of it is being creative and part of it is being introspective. And I know, Jen, that you were kind of a proponent of silence and solitude as well. How does that, like, how would you add that in? And what's the place there for that?
For silence and solitude, it's space. It's what Patricia said. I think it was Patricia said at the beginning, it's giving yourself space. We need space, and it's the weird gift that this has all given us, is that we have some space. We've been forced into having some space. And so I think that that's the place that it has, that with silence and solitude, is that I heard something that most people can't sit alone for 5 minutes without getting really restless. Most humans, because we're so looking outside all the time. We're looking at all the things outside, but what has happened right now is that outside is a rocky road, man. It is shaking. And so we're going inside, and we're looking back inside ourselves, and we need that. We need a little bit of quiet in order to do that, because everything else is like, ugh.
That silence is so important, because we need to get more comfortable with our own voice. And in our silence, we hear ourselves, and we hear what's going on in our minds. We hear what our self-talk is. We hear things that we need to really guide our insight. This is how we guide our insights. We're so used to so many outer things coming in, telling us who we are, so many outer things telling us what we need to get done, what we got to do, that when we sit in silence, I'm telling you, it's amazing what you hear yourself saying to yourself. I told myself, I don't talk to my children like that. Why am I talking to me like that? Why am I telling myself that I'm not doing enough? Why am I telling myself that I can never be enough? Why am I telling myself that? That is not what I should be saying to myself. And so when you get into a silent place, what happened when the pandemic, and you're in your house and you're in your silence place, sometimes we can't stand the sound of our own voice. We can't stand what we hear up there, but it's important for us to hear it so that we can deal with it, and we can change the narrative. We can change that record player that's playing over and over in our heads. Until we throw that record out, and we know that it exists, we've got to be quiet so we can hear it, so we can change that tune.
I love that. I'll just
Before
add
we move,
I just want to add also that having some sort of solitude practice is a journey. And I also feel that there's a fine line between solitude and isolation. And it comes down to the quality of how comfortable you feel with yourself. Because if you're in isolation, there's something that you might be kind of pushing away or hiding from, or trying to turn away from. But in solitude, you get so comfortable with yourself that you just know that you belong to yourself and you are your friend. And even if that hard stuff does come up, that you can say, wow, I can hear this now. And now that I can hear it, I can choose to either believe it or release it.
Right.
Yeah. And so I just want to put that out there, because sometimes I'm an introvert. And so I went through a phase of telling myself that I was practicing solitude, but I was really isolating myself. And the isolation was needed at the time, for me to be able to recognize it and the pain that came along with it for me. But when I was able to shift that into a solitude practice, that was what started planting the seeds that were going into fertile soil, instead of like trying to throw seeds onto, dry, crackly, dirt that isn't being cultivated with that solitude.
Beautiful.
Before we move on to some of our panel's best magic tricks, for anyone who's just joining us, I'm Sarah Jane Crespo with KMUW, and this is the first digital democracy on tap of the new year. We are talking about New Year's solutions with Jennifer Liss of the Creative Commute podcast, Patricia Houston from WSU's Community Engagement Institute, Jill Miller, headmistress of the Finishing School for Modern Women, and Jenny Wiley, a community coach with the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. You can join the conversation through questions on Facebook or by emailing us at info@kmuw.org. Now, I want to come back to you, Jenny. When you say to acknowledge and reevaluate, or that we say to ourselves, what do I really want versus what do I think I should do? What's next, and what do we do with that?
Yeah, having some accountability is going to be, I believe, where the rubber starts to meet the road after you've done the introspection, started to really understand where it is that you want to go and what really matters to you. And so I'm a big proponent of, either partnering with someone who's like a coach or a therapist or a mentor, or being a part of a group that, exactly like with Creative Commute Group, that group is there to help provide you with accountability that when I say, this is how I've been feeling and this is what I'm going to change, you have people who have your back. And it's a really important space to cultivate for yourself that is, that has trust and connection and non-judgment, so that you're setting yourself up for success in whatever that next little baby step is going to be for you, and having somebody mirror that back to you or be available to cheer you on, no matter what that next outcome is for you. So finding your people, so to speak, or being open to finding your people, I feel like is the next step.
And you talk about practicing active listening and using intuition. You've kind of touched on intuition earlier in this conversation. What does that mean in our day-to-day lives? How do we use our intuition? We're kind of taught to be really logical, and I feel like that word kind of gets lost a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that intuition is one of the most underutilized skills that we have as humans. And the way that I pull myself and my practice back into using my intuition muscle is by checking in and doing a body scan and thinking to myself and really assessing, am I in my head right now? Like, am I like thinking a lot and having a lot of like, I need to figure this out type of thoughts? Or am I in my body? Am I feeling like in my shoulders? Yes, right? Like I call it the backpack energy. Like I've been carrying something around all day, right? Your intuition is that gut instinct, that little flutter, that little knowing energy that unless you are really in tune with where you're sitting with your mind and your body and your emotions, it can be really difficult to hear it if you're not really giving yourself some space to tap into what you're experiencing. So active listening is one of those ways that you can not only hold that space for yourself. I'm saying like, you're listening to what you're experiencing in your body, but you can practice it with others too. So it's less about what it is, what the words are that someone is saying. It's more about the tone and the energy of what they're saying. So if you hear somebody saying, oh my gosh, I'm so busy right now. Oh, they're talking about how busy they are. With active listening, what you're doing is taking in what they're saying and really feeling that essence, that intuitive hit. Wow, when you say, I'm really busy, what I'm hearing you say is that you are just really like tired, that you're tired and you really want to break, and that's your intuition coming in. And the more you practice it, the more easily accessible it can be. And it can be kind of like awkward sometimes trying to like refine your intuition and listen to it. So I like to practice it. This is a little woo-woo, but I read tarot. And so I will practice with the tarot cards, pulling tarot cards for somebody and intuiting through the pictures that I see what the message is for somebody. but it doesn't have to be through tarot. There's other symbols or meanings or, even stories coming to life that you can seeing your intuition and just starting to trust that for yourself.
It seems like the kind of thing, humans are pattern recognizers.
Yep.
And, you can find patterns, you can find meaning in these pictures on these cards or in nature around
Right.
you, or this bird that happens by or whatever. That's really interesting, though. It kind of brings me back a little bit. I'm not sure where this ties, but it just makes me think back to being gracious and finding grace with ourselves. And Patricia, I feel like there was something there that you were kind of getting into earlier. And I want to ask you, how can we be more gracious with ourselves as we adapt to really a changing world, just constantly changing world?
That is one of my things for this year, is being more gracious to myself. We extend grace to many people around us, but sometimes we don't extend it to ourselves when we don't meet a goal, or we can't show up for everything that we need to show up for, or we can't do that. We can sometimes create this pattern of beating ourselves up, or like you said, carrying that stress on our shoulders, or just feeling like we failed or doing that. But extending grace to myself, which means that it's okay to not show up everywhere that I need to show up, but extending grace and allowing myself to get back up and be able to do the things they need to do. Some people by January have called the year a wash. They've called it a wash because they can't reach their goal. They've set this and they're already done. Those eating plans we put ourselves on and we think we're going to make it, and we're not even good through the week. And so then there's a wash. Forget it. I've just done it. No, be gracious to yourself that day. It's okay that I just ate all of those chocolates. I'll try again tomorrow. It's okay. It's going to be all right. So extending that grace to ourselves and allowing ourselves to be able to continue on and do the work that we desire to do in ourselves.
I love that.
I've made a promise to myself this year that I'm going to treat myself with at least as much care as I treat everyone else.
Mm.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And it's not a goal, it's a promise.
And I think in this pandemic time, I think that we need to extend grace to others. There is so much going on. There's so much change. I think that our students need grace extended to them for this year because of so much going on with school. The school administrators and the teachers, they need grace extended to them because we're all in a place where we have never been before. So to tie expectations to someone that causes them stress and anxiety and all of that, we need to extend some grace to one another as we make it through this particular time in this year.
Yes.
Jen, I would like to ask you to share your morning practices with us and just kind of how you set yourself up for a good day. And then I feel like probably all of you will also have really good morning practices to share. But Jen, why don't we start with you?
I can't wait to hear what everyone else's morning practices are. So I actually, speaking of having somebody else to help you along the way, I recently met a hypnotherapist, and she set me up with a morning practice that I do. And I go through this routine and it has an affirmation in it. And so it's 10 minutes. I'm like, I can do 10 minutes every morning. And so it's 10 minutes. And I repeat some things to myself and I go through that. And then I get up and I journal. So, and I would never pretend that I am perfect at this. I have to give myself grace because I don't do it every day, but I do strive to, and I try to, and that is a goal because I know that it makes me feel good. When I do it, it feels good, but it's just 10 minutes a day. I feel like that's what you can. How much time do I spend on social media? I'm like, I can give myself that 10 minutes.
Awesome. Anyone else want to share their morning practices?
Well, I'm really anchored in by my kids. But
They do that.
but in a great way, my kids are 10 and 8 right now, and it's just such a precious time, and so usually my mornings consist of a variety of grounding practices, and grounding some mornings is hugs and saying I love you, and just reconnecting with my kids, and then I feel more at peace reconnecting with myself, honestly. And I'm kind of like Jen. It's like, yes, I have great intentions, and I usually am able to spend a little time, meditating or, practicing some quiet time, but sometimes that doesn't work. And so I try to find other ways to ground myself each morning. When the weather's nice, I like to go for a walk in the morning, listening to different morning meditations and things like that. But man, kids are really good for grounding you in the morning because, when you're caring for them, that can be a really beautiful experience, or it can be really draining depending on how you look at it. And so that shift in how you look at it is the grace and the grounding for me. What a privilege I have to be able to take care of my kids every morning.
Yeah, that is an amazing way to look at it, and back again to that point of the perspective that we apply to whatever situations we're in our lives.
Yeah.
And that you can, like, having a child is this instant like love ping. You ping love off of each other, and that you can use that kind of for the same goal as you would just on your own, being introspective or journaling or meditating. So we use whatever we've got.
Yes.
Sounds
I
like.
actually really love that, because I'm thinking, when you talk about a practice, I have to be able to practice. It feels like I have to do it right, or I'm not going to do it at all. But if you can just ground yourself, just take a moment to say, if you wake up, this reminds me of actually Monday morning, I woke up, my very first thought in my head, and this comes back to awareness, was I'm tired. And I thought, I'm going to flip that around and say, I'm excited for the day. I just turned the thought around, and it's really just having that recognition that the thought is even popping into your head, because how many years have I woken up and thought I'm tired? But it took until this Monday, I'm 38 years old, that I finally recognized that's my first thought in the morning. Ew, I'm going to turn that around. So I felt like that. I didn't think of it, Jenny, as grounding, but I think that that's what that did for me, because it did turn my day around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jill or Patricia? Yeah, go ahead, Patricia.
I was just say, for me, it's been just so when my husband, he leaves a little early for work, and I'm usually still in the bed, but after he's gone, mine is quietness. Usually I'm the first one. I reach for the remote, I turn on, and it becomes this background noise. Well, with everything that's been going on, I just been leaving it off and leaving it on. And then there's always a song that for some reason comes to me right before I'm coming to consciousness. Like this morning, it was Love and Happiness. And I just do a check, and I just listen to it play over it in my head. And I check my body. I check my body to see how it's doing. Because I don't know about you, but getting older, things start aching and stuff start happening. So I check my body, and I say, I give thanks and gratitude for my life and for where I am right now, and thankful for this day and how I'm going to show up in this day. So it's the music that's playing in my head, and just these thoughts of good thoughts that are going to get me up out of this bed to move through my day.
I love that. I want to listen to Radio Patricia.
Me too.
It's a new song every morning. I just be like, okay.
Jill, how about you?
Well, y'all are morning people, and I'm not. So I'm a night owl.
Let's hear about your evening, or
well, yeah. I do like to start my day the same way every day when I can. I love to wake up in the morning and read. So I'll read for at least a half an hour, or study something, or that kind of thing. That's what I love to do. I read a lot of fiction. I don't read a whole lot of nonfiction. I think I learn as much from fiction as I do nonfiction, and just looking at how people relate and lives and all of that, and lessons people have learned. So that is my morning ritual, is I start the morning and I hope this isn't TMI, but I have a 6-foot clawfoot bathtub. So I soak in that bathtub for a half an hour every morning and read.
Go ahead.
Love it.
Yes.
So we
Let's
are
go.
almost running out of time here. I want to
Wow.
ask you all to respond to one more question. And, you know, I've read, and it's certainly not scientific, but that less than 10% of New Year's resolutions end up being successful, and that's without a pandemic and all of the national chaos that we are in. So I kind of want to, you know, as we're looking at solutions rather than resolutions here, what final tips, what last insights would you each like to share? Just whatever you think needs to be highlighted or re-highlighted that we've talked about, or something else that we haven't discussed yet. Who would like to go first?
I've got something. The word resolution is a really powerful word. And I think that there's a lot of value in being resolved in something. You know, we're talking about being open and flexible and things like that, but there is a point where you kind of have to just like commit, right? You know, you have to commit to something in order to move through to the next thing. And so recognizing the power of words, honestly, I love rewords. Resolve, I love reflect, remember, and just those types of rewords that you can tap into for yourself, you know, and at the beginning of the year, resolving, resolution can be really powerful, and being open to the lessons that can come through that when you start to kind of allow your mind to wrap around what that means for you.
I would say my takeaway is to think about how you want to feel this year. How do I want to feel? And ground yourself in that and come back to that. And maybe that's not your word of the year, but at least give it some thought and think about what is the feeling that I want to have, and continue going back to that through the year, rather than making this resolution that this is going to happen. How do I want to feel? And just try it, see how it goes.
I haven't chosen my word of the year yet, by the way. I'm testing out like 2 or 3 right now. So
Yeah, give it I like that idea of actually waiting until later in January to figure out what works.
Well, and that's because your year begins when your year begins. It doesn't
Exactly,
necessarily
yes.
have to begin January 1, right? It begins when you desire for it to begin. And so if I would give anything, it would be learn the lessons from last year, learn the lessons of what is important, and concentrate on those things, and just be open to whatever opportunity has come before you on this year, and just show up in those spaces that you need to show up in, and give yourself grace, give yourself space and room to live. Make the resolve to live on this year.
Love that.
And I guess for me, I've made one resolution in my life that I've kept, and that was never to make another New Year's resolution.
Love it.
I know, I love it. So, you know, really being kind to yourself and figuring out what works for you is the best thing. What works for all of us seems to be the word of the year. So
Yes.
give that a try this year and see what you think, but don't be afraid to experiment and try new things and see what really resonates, another reword, what really resonates with you, and what helps you move forward the best in your life. But I think the biggest thing that we need to really be paying attention to is self-care is not an every once in a while thing. That self-care is an everyday thing, and that we really have to look to take care of ourselves, and in that way give ourselves the permissions to grow too.
Feeling that.
Thank you all so much for so many great tips and tricks and sound advice to help us get this year moving in the right direction, even if it's just one person at a time, taking it one day at a time. We wish the best to all of you who have joined us this evening, and I hope you've enjoyed our program. This Digital Democracy on Tap conversation for the start of 2021 is sponsored by Susan and Leon Mader of Mader and Associates. I'm Sarah Jane Crespo. Thanks for joining us, and tell your friends and family that they can watch this conversation on our website under the events tab at engageict.org. Thanks again, and have a healthy new year.